So can I request Madam Nagmani please to come over and take over the stage in terms of the technical session 4, which she will talk to us about advocacy for strengthening hygiene, infection control in professional and community settings.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Today we talk about universal health care. Now the focus is on universal health and sustained development globally. We are not talking about only developing countries or developed countries in case of health care, but now we realize against this COVID pandemic the importance of global health. So when we talk about this universal health coverage, it is important that the community plays an important role in this. So one aspect of universal health services is the availability or functioning of the communities. So the community-based health services are a subsystem of this overall health system, and these are services which are provided by people who spend a substantial part of their time working hours outside the health facility. And these services are provided by two kinds of people. One category is the professional or trained healthcare facilitators such as doctors or nurses or health inspectors who are formally trained. And you have the other category, that is the community health workers who are informal, coming from the community, and then they only receive a certain amount of training. So here you have the two distinct groups. One is the formally trained healthcare workers, and the second one is the community healthcare workers. So whatever type of healthcare that is delivered, and at whichever level or on whichever location it is delivered, the key elements of infection prevention and control remain the same, and all these healthcare providers have to be trained so that they can prevent the occurrence of any infections associated with this healthcare delivery. So the most important thing, as we are aware, is the hand hygiene or so these include hand washing or hand hygiene, personal protective equipment, utilization of personal protective equipment, hygiene and cleanliness of the environment, aseptic techniques, management of invasive devices, management of sharps, decontamination of the equipment that is used, identification of infection, the signs and symptoms, surveillance for health associated infections, education and training of the personnel, and prevention of transmissible infections, diseases, isolation methods and immunization schedules. So coming to hand washing or hand hygiene, so this is the most important aspect, as we all know, and it can be either a hand wash using a soap and water, or when the hands are not visibly contaminated, it could be a hand rub using an alcohol. So the 5 moments of hand hygiene as advocated by the WHO, we are all familiar with that. So before touching a patient, before any aseptic procedures, after coming in contact with body fluids, after touching a patient or after touching the patient's environment. So these are the 4-5 moments, as that is what we are all familiar with. And hand washing. So for a person working in a health facility, a formal health facility, it may be a simple issue, but for these people who are partly trained or untrained, or for these healthcare workers who are working in the remote areas where they don't have the formal facilities, then it can be an issue. So all these people should be properly trained, and so that they don't leave significant areas of their hands unclean or improperly cleaned. So reminders at the workplace, so wherever they are working from and wherever they are being trained, so frequently reminders should be there so that they are aware of this, and then the tendency to drift towards this improper hygienic methods can be prevented. So appropriate indications when it should be done, all the movements, and what is the procedure. So these they have to go through training and again. So refresher training program should be conducted. So these 7 steps of hand washing using soap and water or with this alcohol rub. So these steps we are all familiar, and they have to be reinforced time and again, so that, and then they should be made aware of these areas, so which can be most frequently missed, so that they are more conscious about these areas, cleaning of these areas, especially the thumb and the nails. So when these people are visiting patients at home in the remote areas, so the standards may or may not be available, and in some homes it may be easy to find hot water and running water with a soap, but sometimes it may be difficult. So in such conditions, providing these workers with a community bag containing a liquid soap, alcohol, paper towels, hand cream and detergent wipes will be much easier for them to carry and implement this hand hygiene techniques. So these patients may be provided with hand hygiene dispensers at a low cost, and the employers must ensure that they are provided with this. So these are the different aspects of this hand hygiene. And they should also be trained on personal protective equipment, utilization of personal protective equipment, what are the indications, and then all the technique of donning and doffing. And they should be also, in smaller healthcare facilities are there, then these separate areas for donning and doffing also should be provided. Even when they are working in remote areas or in individual family settings or in individual houses, they can always be innovative and then find the areas which can be separately used for donning and doffing this protective equipment. So whenever there is any indication for personal protective equipment, so they can use this equipment so that they will be able to, they should be trained so that they know when to use it and then how to dispose this used personal protective equipment. So these personal protective equipment can be used for preventing whenever there is a transmission of infection from the patient to the healthcare worker, as well as from the healthcare worker to the patient. So these can be available, and there should be an ongoing training for this proper use of this PPE, and especially during epidemics and pandemics. Now we have seen during this COVID-19 how healthcare workers were moving from house to house. We also had house-to-house screening program for fever and then for identifying and isolation of COVID patients. So in such conditions, it's very essential that these healthcare workers are provided with the personal protective equipment as well as the training that is required on using of this equipment, both donning and doffing, so the sequence and how to discard or treat with this personal protective equipment. So then gloves. So gloves should be used or treated as additional to hand hygiene, not as a replacement of hand hygiene. So hand hygiene, either with soap and water or alcohol rub, should always be the first priority, and gloves should be worn wherever they are needed. So change gloves between the tasks and procedures on the same patient or after contact with one patient and then moving towards the other patient. So these gloves should be immediately removed after completion of the care of a specified task at a point of use before touching any non-contaminated items. So the habit of writing a prescription or holding a pen or holding a mobile with these gloved hands should be discouraged. So before holding these non-contaminated items, the gloves should be removed. Similarly, after removing these gloves, hand hygiene should be performed immediately. So it's also important to train them on removal of these gloves also without contaminating their hands, how they should remove the gloves and then how they should discard. So pinching and removing one glove followed by the other glove. So this exact steps should be taught. And so we have three kinds of these gloves. So one indications where you do not require any gloves. So for examining the patient or indirect patient exposures, here gloves are not required. And the second stage is the wearing of clean but not sterile gloves. So whenever in conditions where you are examining a patient or for handling equipment or contaminated equipment or for management or cleaning of this equipment, in such conditions you don't need a sterile gloves, but you can use only clean gloves. And sterile gloves are actually required whenever an aseptic procedure is being conducted on a patient. So correct use of these gloves is required so that it will be cost effective. Then aprons and gowns. So whenever there is any chance of splashing of body fluids or blood, so in these conditions aprons or gowns can be used. So a clean non-sterile apron can be used in case of patient activities that bring contact with the blood or body substances. Whereas a fluid resistant apron or gown is required whenever a splashing or spraying of blood or body substances is very high. So how to don and how to doff these gowns and how to sterilize and discard these gowns, this also should be taught. Then facial protection. So wearing medical masks, triple layered masks, or so the correct method should be taught. And then whenever these masks become wet or dirty with secretions, they should be immediately removed, otherwise they will become ineffective. And how to wear the N95 mask. My previous speaker has already shown that. So they should be properly trained, because in conditions or wherever the healthcare workers are dealing with patients with airborne transmission infections. So in such conditions, the N95 mask may become necessary, and for such conditions also they should be trained and prepared for. So, as we all know, whenever there is any airborne transmission, like when there are suspected tuberculosis cases or any respiratory infections, COVID, so in these conditions they should be able to wear the N95 mask. So this already it has been taught. So donning and doffing, these steps have to be properly trained. So then footwear. So closed footwear which can be easily cleaned and disinfected should be used whenever there is any spillage of any body fluids or splashes. So for providing this personal protective equipment, so adequate resources should be there. There should be written protocols and training and provision of this personal protective equipment, and then also there should be trained observers. So during this training period, so there should be observers who document whether the donning and doffing is being done properly or not, so that feedback can be given and then any refresher training can be conducted. So, training, as I said, training for PPE should be well done. And another important area is respiratory etiquette or the cough etiquette. So, they should be trained on how to manage a cough or a sneeze, and then how to use the tissues or kerchief or any other cloth, disposed cloth, how it should be disposed, and then hand hygiene to be followed whenever their hands come in contact with this respiratory secretions. So another important aspect of training these healthcare workers in all these issues is that this same information and training can be imparted to the community. So wherever they are visiting, so the patients as well as the family members or the attendants who are giving the care to these patients, they can all be educated, and then on the whole the community can be educated. So wherever, so this is how cough etiquette should be done, and then so the cough etiquette, how to dispose, and then hand hygiene at the end. So another important aspect of healthcare delivery in the community is the environmental hygiene. So whereas the environment in a healthcare facility, organized healthcare facility in a hospital or a nursing home is well organized, and then there is scope for proper cleanliness. So the same scope for cleanliness may not be seen in houses. So when this facility is when the care is being provided to the patients in the community, at their families, or in remote small facilities, so this environmental cleanliness is very important. So as this environment has the impact both on the care that is provided and also the way it is perceived by the patient. So for proper maintenance, proper ventilation, and then adequate water supply should be there. So it will be very difficult to advise the patients on this environmental cleaning, especially when the flooring is not ideal for proper cleaning, mopping. So in these cases, these healthcare workers have to be innovative, tactful, and then they should be able to give proper advice to these family members. So they have to be diplomatic and then make suggestions to alter the flooring or any other conditions of the house. Then asepsis. So maintaining aseptic techniques is very important. So there should be a conscious effort to ensure that the patient is free from any potential or pathogenic organisms. So hand hygiene, clean environment, sterile equipment, non-touch techniques. So all these form the integral part of an aseptic procedure. So especially most commonly in this healthcare given it community, many times we see the IV therapy being given by the nurses at their homes. So in such cases, when they need a proper sterile areas and sterile equipment, they can simply use a plastic box which can be easily cleaned by disinfectant wipes, and then it can be converted into a sterile area so that they can administer the IV fluids in a sterile condition. So the box lid can be decontaminated, and the aseptic procedure of this IV administration can be easily followed. So once again, after this procedure is completed, this plastic box can be easily disinfected, and then it can be kept ready for the next procedure. So then another important area is the management of invasive devices. So what are the invasive devices which the healthcare workers will be coming across in the community management? So the typical invasive devices include intravenous lines, urinary catheters, tracheostomy tubes, gastrostomy tubes, and peritoneal dialysis catheters. So Risk of infection while managing these invasive devices, it depends upon the condition of the patient and the length of the time for which these devices are in place. So if possible, the dictum should be to avoid these devices, and wherever these devices are essential, so aseptic handling, asepsis and minimum handling should be the dictum. So disconnection which increases the risk of infection should be avoided, and some of these devices, for example urinary catheters, so they have specific requirements. For example, downward flow of the urine should be maintained. So such conditions should be maintained so that this the risk of infections can be minimized. And also using certain products with specific infection prevention characteristics such as silver impregnated ones or antibiotic impregnated catheters can be used. So avoid using invasive devices and remove as soon as possible. Staff inserting and managing the device should be trained appropriately. So whenever these nurses or healthcare workers, when they are having the opportunity to maintain or handle these invasive devices, they should always be trained. So the training part should be concentrated upon, and then they should be advised on using the aseptic techniques, and then avoid disconnecting the device, and then always use a sterile equipment. Also the solutions, the liquids that are used also should be in a sterile condition. And then they should be trained on checking the integrity of the packages. So whenever they are using single use or disposable instruments, so they should be trained to check the integrity of the package before it is opened, and also they should check the expiry date. So they should be able to use it before the expiry date for usage. And whenever these devices are being used, they should also be on the vigilance for any signs of infection like redness or any irritation. And they should also be trained on maintenance of documentation. So they should document, so when these catheters were inserted, what was the indication and for how long they have been there in place. Then another important aspect is the sharps management. So injury from a contaminated sharp can lead to transmission of the bloodborne infections. So there can be risk both to the patients as well as the healthcare workers. So these injuries are commonly associated with disposal or overfilled sharps. So prompt disposal and removal of these sharp containers are very important. So what are the principles, how they should be trained on the management of this sharp management? So use disposable gloves wherever necessary, then use the disposable aprons and goggles, and then use the designed sharp containers, and these sharps should be disposed immediately into the container. So they should not be left lying around, but once the use is completed, immediately these sharps should go into the designated sharp containers. And do not overfill the sharps, and never resheath the needles. And then there can be specially engineered sharps such as auto disabling needles. So such needles or lancets can be used to avoid such injuries. So the ideal thing would be to take the sharps container to the patient for these healthcare workers. So sometimes it may be difficult to go every time. So in such conditions, it may be preferable to leave a sharp container with the house facility. And one has to take care that this sharps container should be kept high above or locked in a cupboard so that it is out of reach for the children or the pets. So the sharp containers should be either attached to the wall or should be in a cupboard. So then next comes the decontamination of the equipment. So decontamination of this equipment can be of organic matter, and they can be used for handling the instruments or prior to their cleaning and sterilization. So this is the cornerstone of infection control. So this scrutiny is very important because whenever these cases occur, so there should be a root cause analysis. So what were the procedures that were taken, who has done it, whether all the protocols were followed or not, so how it has occurred. So that it will help in learning proper lessons so that same problems will not be repeated. So what are the factors that influence the acquisition of these healthcare infections? What are the investigations? What are the interventions? What treatments? And then what is the kind of care delivery that has been done? So analysis of all these factors should be done. All need to be investigated and reported against in a root cause analysis. So effective to work closely with a local health protection unit, epidemiology unit, so that they can help in development of effective systems and then help in learning. So all these community health workers, they have to be trained and supervised and monitored by the local units of acute healthcare, or whether they are in the government or private sector or in the NGOs. So the surveillance is a multidisciplinary team approach, and root cause analysis is usually delegated to the infection control nurse. So whenever any such healthcare associated infections are seen in this community healthcare delivery systems, then they can always have a connection to the local acute care centers, and then this root cause analysis can be done. And education and training, this is what I have been stressing in every slide. So education and training of the community healthcare workers is very important, so that it establishes the best practice, and then it ensures that the knowledge of new trends and practices are disseminated. So whenever new concepts are being developed and the new policies are made, so all these healthcare workers in the community, they should be made aware so that they will be able to implement these practices. In the community healthcare system, the staff have to travel to attend, or the infection control expert may travel to the site of training. So they have to be trained. Either the classes are conducted in the experts room or in the expert site, or the infection control experts can go to these community health workers in the community, analyze the cause for these infections, and then train them regularly. So various methods of training can be employed, such as e-learning or regular meeting sessions or drop-in sessions. By these various methods, these people can be kept up to date in their infection control practices. And this training can also be in the form of a link or a cascade method. So this is a very effective method where the link practitioners can be trained, and these link practitioners in turn will be able to train their own colleagues, so that it can become more cost effective. And wherever these training programs are conducted, they should be conducted in these core training areas. So once again, all these important keystones or cornerstones of the infection control practices, such as hand hygiene, asepsis, decontamination and cleaning of the equipment, management of waste and laundry and disposal, sharps management, management of personal protective equipment, and methods of dissemination should be done. So whenever these training programs are conducted, again whatever method has been used for conducting this training also should be documented. And then these infection control policies and guidance should be widely disseminated and made available to all the community health workers. Then another important aspect is the prevention of transmissible infections, isolation and immunization. So this COVID-19 pandemic has taught us the importance of isolation in the community at home, So we have seen most of these cases were managed by home isolation, so that reduces the burden on the health facilities. So these healthcare workers should be trained on isolation techniques, the use of PPE, what are barrier precautions, and then what is the need for immunization. So this isolation can be conducted in a simple method by isolating in a single room, just by limiting contact with the other members of the family. So the requirement and capacity to isolate in a community setting will be normally minimal. So in contrast to the hospital setting, if you are isolating the patients in the community, it is very simple and easily manageable. So that is why we have seen that most of these asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic patients, we have advised for home isolation and home management. And prevention of transmissible infections. Whenever any transmissible infections such as for example chicken pox are identified in the community, then these they should be trained on isolation and this prevention of transmission based prevention control techniques they should be taught. To report to the authorities. So whatever infections are diagnosed, they should be reported to the statutory authorities so that measures can be taken for containment of these infections. And in addition, a number of diseases have effective vaccines. So it is the responsibility of all the community health workers and their employers to ensure that they are all vaccinated against these communicable diseases so that they are safe before they take care of the safety of the patients. And significant infection control risks are also seen in the community nursing. So many of these nursing staff, they may not be aware of the suspected infections that the patients may be harboring. So all these patients, wherever they are going and wherever they are contacting the patients, so the universal standard precautions have to be followed. So various organisms associated with healthcare associated infections they should be well aware of. And then we have what are the barriers to effective infection control compliance. So the environment, in some cases the community nurses may not know the area where they are visiting, and then poor knowledge and outdated knowledge also can act as a barrier for effective infection control mechanisms in the community. So once we know these barriers, it's important to overcome these barriers and then take effective measures for infection control practices in the community settings. Thank you.